The Man Next to You. Original stories of ordinary people in extraordinary hours, the ones history forgets to name. Season 1, The 100 Hours. Episode 2, Top Cover. Captain Dale Marsh flew an airplane that everybody called ugly, and he loved it the way you love a thing that brings you home. It was an A-10, a Warthog, and it was built around a gun, a 30-millimeter cannon the length of a car, and the airplane was really just the wings and the cockpit and the two big turbofan engines bolted on behind to carry the gun to where it needed to be. It was slow. Fighter pilots made fun of it. It had a titanium bathtub built around the cockpit so the pilot could fly through ground fire that would shred anything sleeker, and big, dumb, straight wings that could hang every kind of ordnance, and it could turn in a phone booth and fly home with half of it shot away. Marsh had never wanted to fly anything else. He was up before dawn on the 24th of February, in the dark over the desert, stacked in a holding pattern with a flight of other hogs, waiting for the ground war to start beneath him. And his job for the next 100 hours was the oldest job in his trade and the one nobody made movies about. Top cover. Stay over the men on the ground. Be there when they need you. Most of the time it meant it boring holes in the sky for hours. And sometimes for a few minutes that you'd remember the rest of your life, it meant being the only thing standing between a man on the ground and the worst day of his life. Boxer flight. This is boxer lead. Push it up. We're going to work. The sun came up the way it does in the desert all at once, the gray going gold, and below him, Marsh could see it. The whole enormous thing, the army moving north. Lines of vehicles, thousands of them, kicking up dust trails that ran for miles. The greatest land movement since the Second World War. And from 12,000 feet, it looked slow and silent and almost peaceful, like watching weather. He knew it wasn't peaceful down there. He'd been a forward air controller early in his career, riding with the ground guys, and he'd never forgotten it. The difference between how clean a war looks from the air and how it actually smells and sounds from the dirt. That was the thing that made him good at this job, he thought. He never forgot that the little symbols on his targeting display were standing next to men. Real men in the dirt, scared, depending on the guy in the ugly airplane to know the difference. Boxer lead, this is Sandy 2-3. A new voice came up on the radio, a ground controller, tight and fast. We've got a situation. Troops in contact, grid to follow. Marsh was already rolling in that direction before the grid finished coming over. Troops in contact. The three words that turned the boring job into the only job that mattered. It was a column that had run into trouble, an armored unit that had pushed ahead fast, the way everybody was pushing fast, and had come up over a rise and found a dug-in enemy position that hadn't gotten the message about surrendering. Boxer, we are taking fire from a tree line in a berm complex north of our position, the controller said. We've got vehicles pinned. We need you danger close. How copy? Danger close. It meant the enemy and the friendlies were so close together that Marsh's own fire could kill the men he was trying to save. It meant the ground commander was accepting that risk because the alternative was worse. It meant everybody's margin for error had just gone to zero. Sandy 2-3, boxer lead. I copy danger close, Marsh said, and his voice was calm because the calm was the job. I need you to mark your position and talk my eyes onto the target. I am not putting a round down until I am certain. Say again your friendly positions. This was the part that the gun and the titanium and the speed had nothing to do with. This was just two men on a radio, one in the sky and one in the dirt, building a picture together word by word until the man in the sky could see through the eyes of the man in the dirt. Marsh rolled in lower under the haze, slow and deliberate, taking his time, taking the ground fire because you did not rush this. Rushing this killed the men you came to save. I've got your smoke, Marsh said. I see the friendly vehicles. Confirm the target is the berm 300 meters north of your smoke. That's a firm. Boxer, that's a firm north of the smoke. You are cleared hot. Get some. Marsh rolled in. The hog came down the chute and the world filled the windscreen. And he put the gun on the berm and he squeezed the trigger. and the airplane shuddered and slowed in the air the way it did. That was the thing nobody told you. The gun was so powerful it actually braked the airplane when you fired it. And a second and a half of fire reached down from the sky and walked across the berm in a line of dust and fire and was gone. He pulled off and came around. The radio was quiet for a second. Then, "Good hit, Boxer, good hit. You got him. The fire's stopped. The fire has stopped." And the controller's voice cracked, just slightly, the professional flatness breaking for half a second into something human and grateful and young. "Thank you, Boxer. You saved our bacon. Thank you." "Boxer's off, coming around to cover you," Marsh said. "Get your wounded sorted. I'll be up here. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." And that was the part that mattered most, maybe. Not the gun run, the sentence after. "I'm not going anywhere." He circled over the column while they sorted themselves out, while they got their wounded loaded, while the adrenaline drained out of 100 men who had just learned they were going to live. And he was the angel over them, the slow, ugly angel. And they would never see his face, and he would never know their names. He stayed until his fuel ran low and another hog came to relieve him, the way they always did. The unbroken chain of top cover, one airplane sliding into the orbit as another slid out, so that the men on the ground would never once look up and find the sky empty. "Boxer lead, your relief's on station," the controller said. "Thanks again. We won't forget it." "You take care of those guys down there," Marsh said. Boxer led, off station, heading home. He climbed away to the south and the fight fell behind him, and the desert opened up huge and gold and quiet. And he had that feeling he always had after, the shaking that came once it was over and safe to shake. The hands trembling a little on the stick now that they were allowed to. He thought about the controller's voice cracking. He thought about the men in the vehicles. He didn't know a single one of their names and never would. They'd go home and tell their families that a plane had saved them that day in the desert, and they'd never be able to say who was flying it. And that was right. That was how it was supposed to be. The 100 hours were like that, run after run, day into night into day, the hogs working in shifts around the clock. At night it was different and worse and somehow better. The dark desert below and the enemy columns trying to move under cover of night, and the hogs working with flares and infrared, and the strange, terrible beauty of it, the burning vehicles like candles strung across the black, and Marsh trying always to keep clear in his mind that those were not candles, those were machines with men in them. And some of those men were the enemy, and some of those men, by now, were just trying to run home. And the leaflets had told them to abandon their vehicles and walk. And the ones who'd listened were safe, and the ones who hadn't were the candles. He took no joy in the candles. That was a line he'd drawn for himself a long time ago. You did the job, you did it well, you protected your guys on the ground with everything you had, and you never ever let it become fun, because the day it became fun was the day you'd lost the thing that made you worth saving. Some of the young pilots struggled with that line. Marsh talked to them after, on the ground, the way Cordova talked to his 19-year-olds. "You did good today. You kept our guys alive. Now go to sleep and don't let it get into you. We're not here because we love this. We're here so the guys in the dirt can go home." On the last day near the end, he flew one more, and it was a strange one. A ground controller came up on the radio, and it wasn't troops in contact, it was the opposite. "Boxer, we've got a column of enemy vehicles, but they're—" "Wait one." A pause. "Boxer, be advised, they're displaying surrender. There's white flags. They're abandoning the vehicles and walking south. Do not, I say again, do not engage. We're sending people forward to take the surrender." "Boxer, copies all," Marsh said. "No engagement. I'll cover the guys you send forward." And he circled and he watched through his targeting pod as the tiny figures came up out of the vehicles with their hands up, hundreds of them, and his own people went forward to meet them, and nobody fired. And the war just stopped in that one square of desert, stopped and turned into men helping other men, giving them water, pointing them south. Marsh circled over the top of it, the slow, ugly guardian, his gun cold, watching a thing that was better than any gun run he'd ever made. Boxer, the controller said. I think we're good here. Quite a thing to watch, isn't it? It surely is, Marsh said. It surely is. Boxer's gonna stay up here and keep an eye on you anyway. You take care of the man next to you down there. Roger that, Boxer. You too. He flew home that last time as the ceasefire came down, and he landed the ugly airplane he loved, and he walked around it the way he always did, putting his hand on the cool metal of it, on the scars and the patches, the airplane that had carried him down into the fire and brought him back every time. The crew chief was there. Good jet, sir? Good jet, Marsh said. Best jet there is. He patted the nose of it, took care of us. And he thought, walking away across the ramp in the last light, about all the men down there in the dirt who'd looked up over those 100 hours and found him there. The slow angel, the ugly guardian, and who would go home now and never know his name, the same way he would never know theirs. It didn't matter. It was never about the names. It was about being there, staying over them, being the thing in the sky that meant somebody up there knew they were down there and cared and would not leave. That was top cover. That was the whole job. You stayed. You took care of the man below you, the man next to you, the man you'd never meet. And when your fuel ran low, somebody slid in to take your place. So the sky was never empty. So no man ever looked up and found himself alone. You've been listening to The Man Next to You. These people are fictional. What they carried was not. If this story stayed with you, leave it where someone else might find it, and come back next week for the next one. Until then, take care of the man next to you.